Speakers from the Department of Family and Consumer Sciences with us. And to present those speakers will be Dr. Wabi.
Thank you. Good morning and thank you for coming. Now these nice carves are made at EIU. So if you want to get one sometime or learn something about them, here's Dr. Katie Shaw to tell you. She is kind enough, here's her assistants and students to do this, which will be going to be used on November 2nd in the when students do the grand finale of the symposium and walk like Egyptians and dance like Egyptians and sports like Egyptians, ancient Egyptians. So this is kind of a plug for the last day. And without much ado, we'll start the Family and Consumer Sciences show for Ancient Egypt.
Okay. Good morning. I'm Dr. Betsy Pudliner, and again, I'm in Family and Consumer Sciences. I teach hospitality and tourism, so I'm in the travel industry, and I'm going to talk about travel in the ancient world. And what's really you have to remember is that we are embedded in the natural, physical, economic and social environments. Like Chicago has a specific environment, these three environments. And at this time period, man is basically coming into its own. And what is really unique is that ever since humans have been upright, we have needed a bed for our head, and we needed a butt for our seat. Or a seat, yeah, butt for our seat. Okay? Or a seat for our butts for like restaurants and stuff. So we've always had to eat, we've always had to sleep. And there are some really interesting, if you look at the timeline, okay, one of the things that starts the modern era of travel is the Sumerians. Now I know this is an Egyptian, it's in the Mediterranean area, but what it is they came up with the idea of money, recording information, so they came up with writing, as well as the tour guide, actually people taking people around, becoming experts, and showing them where to travel to. Okay, so this is 4000 BCE. Okay, and along the banks of the Nile, because of the fertility of the water and the area, the type of stone, and everything that's going, we see a unification of Egypt. And we see a lot of city-states arising that they're being connected by the Nile itself. Okay, and this is between 3000 and 1200 BCE. Again, some more technology that is coming about, and this is, I know you're going to think this is really strange, but it's actually an industrial revolution because we see a shift, again, in technology. Technology is playing a great part in the development of different countries, and especially in Egypt. And what we see is not only sturdy crafts, carts becoming available, the wheel, the Sumerians again come up with the wheel, but there's the ability to travel further and farther than they were before. So again, sturdy carts. So the Egyptians are now going and penetrating further into Africa, as well as travel around the Mediterranean. And we see turquoise and copper being extracted in Egypt and the Sinai. Again, they're cutting into the stone and they're building the elaborate tombs for the pharaohs. Now, they may have had other reasons for the building of the Great Pyramids, but actually, because of these curiosities, these colossal buildings that no one has ever seen before, word is getting out because we're able to travel further. And they're bringing people around the Mediterranean. Sturdy river crafts are able to navigate the Nile and the surrounding seas, much more so than before. And we also have now a market segment coming about. Men of great wealth, men of great power are traveling to far distant lands for exchange. It's becoming a world dynamic. So we see greater economic exchange, greater sociocultural impacts or acculturalization. And acculturalization is when two different cultures come together and they either clash or they exchange and become interwoven. Okay? And we also see a change in the physical and natural environment. We see the, again, the horses are coming in, technology, and we see people chronicling their travel. We see journals coming about. I couldn't find my reference for this, and this is later on in the timeline, but we see, because of the writing capability, people are now jotting down their experiences, and they're talking to people, and they say, look, we need these services. I'm a person coming from the government. I want these type of services. I should be put up in these type of hostels. I want, the best food. Okay, I want to be able to travel in relatively peace and quiet. Okay. All right. And they're leaving behind a chronicalization of what they've been doing. And like this gentleman, Prince, I'm sorry, I'm not probably able to say this really correct. Harkuf. Okay. He's left, actually inscribed in his tomb, opened up the way into this country, Sudan, did it in 7 months, and brought back all kinds of goods and rare products. Again, souvenirs. We see the development of travel activities. King of Ur, I don't know if I said that correctly. My dad would be proud. He's a history teacher. Okay. We see the beginning of roads being built. Actually use of products and materials to actually create roads. Now, they didn't come into their own until the Roman times. But again, something to make it easier. We see the first hotels coming about. And they're called caravansaries. Okay. Ooh, don't know if I said that right. And again, it's just not a place for people to lay their heads, but it's also the first bazaars, people to exchange goods. I see something, I like it, I want to take it back with me. Okay. The Phoenicians are now improvising. They're traveling all around the Mediterranean, and they're passing words about the different areas, especially Egypt. They're exchanging their own goods. And they're going as far north as the British Isles. We have a development from the sturdy carts now to the chariot in Egypt. Again, a much more sturdy device to take them around different areas of Egypt, different areas of Africa. And you also see a really big development in military. Again, you want to travel in peace. You want to get from one place to the other and not be bothered. Okay. And now we really see what we like to call in tourism is these pockets of activities, these constructions of different places where people can go and see things. Even though they had other connotations, the pharaohs wanted these elaborate tombs because, I'm a pharaoh. This is me. I'm a big person. I want to be remembered. These other people that were traveling around the Mediterranean, they see these things, they say, wow, I can take this back. Look at this. I can take this back to my own country. You've got to go see this. They're taking drawings. They're drawing things. They're actually making the first postcards and taking them back to their own countries. And they're actually creating the trade routes. Queen Hatshepsut, thank you. Sorry, again, I'm terrible at this. She's one of the first women to actually travel along the Nile and down into Greater Africa. And her travels are actually recorded at the temple of Dir Habahi at Luxor. That I could get, so forgive me. All right. And we have one of the first hostels. Again, these are actually now you're paying for a stay, and you're actually exchanging money to stay in a hotel. They are, before, they're more development from the the original hostels. And up until 500 BCE, again, we now have greater number of people coming from Europe, greater coming from northern France area, down into Egypt, and they're leaving their mark behind, because that's one of the things that tourists do. We like to leave our mark on things. We like to take pieces of stone home. So the Greeks actually left their little scrolls or their graffiti, and actually that word you now see come out of Egypt and out of the Greeks, graffiti, and they've left their mark on Egyptian artifacts. And if I really take us into the 19th century, this is actually, you can pinpoint this time period to actually the start of organized tourism, like the tour guides. You always wanted somebody that knew how to get there and knew how to get back, because travel was dangerous. But think of the modern tour guide. Think of the Grand Tour back in the 19th century. This is actually part of the economy now. And people are now giving money exchange for services. So it is actually pinpoint organized tourism into this era. So from 3000 up until 500 BCE. Okay. Are you ready? Okay.
Hey, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. My name is Katie Shaw, and I teach in Family and Consumer Sciences. I teach textile and apparel design and merchandising as well, which would be the business end of the fashion industry and apparel industry. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about textiles and fashion. We said textiles primarily for our name in the program. It seemed more, it kind of had a flow better. So I'm going to focus a little bit on both. But the first thing I think perhaps that we think of when we think of the Egyptian culture is linen. And linen is a cellulosic fiber, meaning that it comes from the stem of a plant. And I have a flax plant there in the corner for you to kind of see. Linen textiles are some of the oldest fibers found in the world. So researchers will go back and forth as to whether or not silk is older or linen is older. So linen is sometimes also used in currency. Our US dollar actually has linen in it as well as cotton. And of course, mummies were also wrapped in linen cloths. It was seen as a symbol of light and purity, and also as a display of wealth. And you can see in the picture here that the Egyptians are harvesting the flax plants, and then they would weave those into the linen products. Now at this point they could weave it so that it was fairly fine. However, it would be nothing compared to the fineness that we can weave today as far as linen goes. Okay. If we talk about dress or fashion a little bit, the undermost garment was a loincloth or skint, and usually the lower class would wear only a skint or a loincloth, and then upper class citizens would cover that with, it kind of was a depiction of your social class. So if you could afford leather to go over your linen cloth or your loincloth, that was one step up, and then if you could get an extra covering over that, it was another, and so on and so on. Okay, so you might have a wrapped skirt, which was called a skinty, and then also women also wore skirts as well. So the dress was fairly similar for men and women. The skirt length also varied between the different kingdoms. So we have the Old Kingdom, Middle Kingdom, and New Kingdom. The Old Kingdom, the skirt was generally knee length or shorter and fitted closely around the hips. The Middle Kingdom, the skirt was elongated, sometimes reaching to the ankle. Shorter versions were available if you were working and needed to be able to move around better and all of that. Fabric was usually sheer, and you could see the loincloth visibly underneath it. During the Middle Kingdom, some of the pictures depict pleats being used in their skirts. So that's kind of interesting how they did that. Perhaps they used a starching method or a board to fold the pleats. Okay, and then the New Kingdom, again, we see the use of pleats in the skirts, and they were, again, we saw them get shorter and they fit more closely. So it's interesting that in the Old Kingdom, they were short, the Middle Kingdom a little bit longer, and then we go back to the short skirt in the New Kingdom. Just like we see in fashion today, in the 60s, it was all about the mini skirts, then we go back to the maxi skirts, which are really long, and mini skirts, and back and forth as far as, historically what's happening in our environment can affect our fashion. Okay. So women also wore a tight-fitting, colorful dress, often called a sheath dress. And then if I click on this, it shows you that sometimes they had a beaded garment that was put over the wrapped linen sheath underneath. Okay. Does this remind anyone of any Western wear in the 1900s, the 20th century, early 20th century? Exactly. So if this kind of reminds you of a flapper dress, and I have pictures later to show you, but where we see the beaded garments going over and they're see-through, and then a non-see-through garment underneath them. Oh, forgot I could use this. Okay, so makeup was also important during this time, and this is, sometimes people don't think of this as part of fashion, but it's something that we call a body modification. So even lotions could be part of fashion and a part of makeup. Okay, so it served both cosmetic and health purposes. So they did it not only to make themselves more beautiful and as appealing to the opposite sex, but also lotions to help protect their skin in the hot desert sun and all of that sort of thing. Jewelry was also extremely popular throughout the history of the Egyptian nation. It often indicated, just as it does today, right, the bigger my engagement ring, the more wealth I have. The same was true for the Egyptian culture. It indicates a social position and level of wealth, and even the poor adorned themselves with as much jewelry as possible. So as much as I could get, I would put on. And as we know, they often buried themselves with all of their jewelry with them, and we're thankful for that so that we could discover it and learn about their culture today. So that could be taken and used in the afterlife. This was probably my favorite thing that I learned while discovering and learning about Egyptian fashion, was the discovery of King Tut's tomb. So it was discovered in 1922, and it played a large role in the fashions of the Western world. And I had never really thought about that, but if you look back at some of the different pictures, I have the flapper dress with the beaded sheath over it, and all sorts of different influences. Eyeliners became more popular, the bright red lips, and all sorts of things. It was also the primary influence of the Art Deco design. So if you think about also gold thong sandals were big in the 20s, eyeliner, and etc. If we jump ahead to 40 years later and the influence that it had on the Western world, we can look at Liz Taylor in her version of Cleopatra in 1963. So I wasn't around in the 60s, Maybe some of you were. So can you tell me some of the fashion trends of the 60s that you think had an Egyptian influence? I'm not saying any of you were around in the 60s either, but maybe you've read a history book or two.
I remember my mom having a lot of two-tone gold jewelry and the large necklaces.
Okay.
And the compacts that she carried were very elaborate and a lot of turquoise on them.
Okay. Exactly.
Also
Yeah.
the makeup, all the colors around the eyes and things like that.
Yes.
They're doing that
I was
again.
I was born in the 50s, but I do recall the late 60s, just being flooded with all that.
All sorts. And I forgot to tell you, for makeup, their favorite colors were green and blue for eye makeup, and black, of course. And they ground down different plants and added liquid to them to make the different makeup. And we do see a lot of green and blue, and of course the cat eyes as well.
What about the things that African American women put on their head? Maybe starting about that time.
That's true as well.
These knitted things that sort of look like the thing on the right-hand side.
Well, and hair pieces and wigs were popular in the 60s as well, like wearing a flip in your ponytail, which would make it look fuller and bigger. And wigs were used a lot in the Egyptian culture as well. So, okay. So fashion in Egypt today, I found one primarily fashion designer, and he is in Cairo. Sucha is his name. And I have a little video clip to show you. This is from 2010. I don't know if there's sound, but we can watch. But you can see the historical influences even in modern day design. So here the green and gold color is important. And one thing I forgot, this necklace I wore especially for today, it's from the 1920s. It was my great-grandmother's. And I thought I would put it on because you can even see kind of the Egyptian influences of it as well. And my boots also, if you think about Egyptian tapestry, linen, and things like that. So we owe a lot of our fashion influences to the Egyptian culture. If you think about the jeweled sandals that have been popular the last couple of summers, and other sorts of things. Okay? You're welcome.
Okay, my name is Axton Betz, and I'm an assistant professor of consumer studies in the Family and Consumer Sciences program. And my research interest focuses on identity theft and other consumer fraud issues. And so that's the focus of my presentation today. So as probably many of you know, there are various forms of financial fraud that are increasing not only here at home in the United States, but internationally as well. And fraud is increasing in Egypt, particularly financial fraud. And I have some specific examples of those, including advanced fee scams, credit card fraud, phishing, and I'll describe what that is later, and a variety of other financial frauds. And financial fraud has been in existence for hundreds of years. It's just over time the schemes evolve in different ways. But the basic ideas of financial fraud have been in existence for a very, very long time. So with regard to ancient Egypt and fraud, there was fraud going on with the scribes who were keeping the pharaoh's books. And the scribes, their job was to inventory grain, gold, and anything of value that could be used as currency. There was theft going on with the scribes. They were stealing these items that could be used as currency. And this got to be such a problem over time that the solution was to have two scribes inventory the same items. And if there was any discrepancy between the two scribes, the punishment for both of those scribes was death. So pretty stiff punishment for theft. That's true. That is definitely possible. Financial fraud, again, is a concern in Egypt. And according to the American Chamber of Commerce in Egypt, we need to raise consumer awareness regarding financial fraud. Sounds pretty similar to what we're hearing here at home as well. Again, some examples, and I'll get into each of these as I go through the presentation, include credit card fraud, online bank fraud, and advanced fee scams. In 2009, $62 million was stolen in Egypt from consumers by stealing credit card and debit card information online. One reason that credit card and debit card fraud occurring online is such a problem in Egypt is because security is an issue between the banks and the credit card companies and the merchants, and it's communication is a problem, and basically the security is very, very weak. And so people who commit these scams, commit these frauds, they know it and they take advantage of it. Also in 2009, 53 people were arrested for committing online bank fraud, and these 53 individuals included U.S. nationals and Egyptian nationals. This was the largest online financial fraud ring where they actually had arrests in the United States. What people were doing, then this originated in Egypt. Egyptian nationals were sending emails to Bank of America customers and Wells Fargo customers saying that something to the effect of your online bank account password's been compromised, there's something wrong with your account in some way, we need you to click this link, and the link is always in the email. You need you to click on this link and reset your information. And what this particular phishing scam was doing, these phishing emails, they were asking for people's bank account numbers and online bank account passwords. People who got these emails, it elicited fear because they were being told that their account information was compromised. The email looked like it really came from Wells Fargo and Bank of America. And so people were giving their personal information to these scammers. And so my last fraud that I want to talk to you guys about that is a huge problem in Egypt is advanced fee fraud. Now, this is something that's been going on in the United States for a much longer period of time. And here in the United States, people are wising up to it. They're not falling for it as much. But in Egypt, this is still a major problem. And what happens is that a potential victim gets an email that says, I can promise you this large sum of money if you send me what amounts to a much lesser fee as a transaction fee. You know, people fall for this stuff. They want that large sum of money. Some people don't believe in the adage that if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And so they send the transaction fee to wherever they're directed to send it to. What happens is that the scam artist keeps that transaction fee, and the victim has no idea how to contact them, or if they email them back, they never get a response. And so the scammer keeps that transaction fee, and the victim sees no money from this promised large sum of money. And with that, I will hand it over to Kathy.
Ancient Egyptian cookies. Fresh from the pyramid today.
Okay, unhook me, please. It's okay. It's okay. I got it on there good. Here, you need.
Oh, do I need that?
Yeah, you do.
Yes, unfortunately.
I thought everybody could hear me.
Oh, I know. I thought so too. For me. I'm sorry. Okay, there you
Don't
go.
get so close, Betsy.
Sorry.
Okay. That looks really nice. I am Kathy Rhodes, and I'm going to talk today about the Egyptian food. I don't use a lot of PowerPoint because I kind of think I know food a lot. Egyptian food, though, when I started researching this, was amazing to me. I was so excited about it because of what I found out. And what I found out was that if everyone today would eat like they did back in the day, 3,000 years ago, we would all be fit as a fiddle. Because what they did is they ate exactly the way God intended us to eat, which was off the land. And so we ate vegetables, we ate fruits, we ate fish. We had very little meat, very little pork and beef, because there was no way to raise the cattle there in the desert. You know, Egypt is a very dry country. So the only thing they did have, though, was if they lived by the Nile, is they had the Nile. And the Nile, of course, it would flood, and then when it would recede, it would leave silt and different things on the land that later on they could use to plant their crops with. You know, they could plant their crops, and the land, the soil itself was just black. That's how fertile it was. And it grew the best wheat. And the best wheat made the best bread. And it also made the best beer, which beer and wine were the two main beverages that we had for Egypt. That's what they drank, you know. And then the bread also. So it was the bread, the beer, and the wine were your main staples. They also had figs and dates. Now the cookies you're enjoying now, I hope you're enjoying them. They just came out of the oven. That's why I was a little late. They have dates in them. And I flew them in yesterday from this guy here, just so we could bake your cookies today, okay? I could have used raisins, but I thought, no, let's use dates, because that's what they ate, was dates. And the figs and the wine, they ate them also as food, but they also used them to make wines. And so that's hence where that came from. They also used a lot of pomegranates and pomegranate wine, the pomegranate seeds. You know, we think that we have invented something when we're using the pomegranate seeds. Forget it. Egypt had it way before we did. So they ate more healthy then, especially poor people. Poor people could not afford anything. They could not, I mean, they were lucky to get a garden raised, you know, so that they had vegetables out of that garden. They didn't have money for meat. They didn't have money for the olive oils and the coconuts, such as the rich did. The rich ate very lavishly, and the rich were not as fit as the poor people. Of course, the poor people also had to work. They had to physically get out and tend the garden and physically go out and pick it and do everything else with the garden and among other things. You know, they had open-air markets that sometimes they could take some of the things. If they had anything left, they could take it to the market and sell it to get money to buy different things with, you know. They also had fruits. I mean, they had, I can't even remember what they all, pomegranates and different fruits like that. So it was fruits and their vegetables. The vegetables were mainly cabbages, turnips, what else? Onions. Onions was a huge staple for the Egyptians back then, because that had a lot of flavor for the Egyptians in their meal planning and in their cooking process. They had onions, they had garlic, different things like that, but it was all natural. They didn't use any fertilizers of any kind. They used no chemicals of any kind. So everything was fine, you know. And once you take this into your body, you know, if you don't fill it full of chemicals and all the stuff, you know, it makes the body better. So that's why the poor people ate more healthy than the rich people did. Rich people, they could afford to decant their wines and beverages, their beers and different things in nice silver and bronze pots, where the poor people had clay pots. And it wasn't until, I can't remember what year it was, but anyway, that's when they lined the inside like a glaze on the inside of the pot, because at times the pot was made out of clay and it would seep through. Whatever beverage was in there would seep through, and which would cause problems, So later on, they did glaze the inside of the pot. As far as cooking, the poor people cooked with clay pots. They cooked over an open fire. Usually it was an open fire. It was usually on a roof, an open roof. It's on the top of the roof. Well, I don't know how you have a closed roof. I don't know. Oh, well. Anyway, and so they did that. They might have a place out back where they dug a pit or lined it with branches. And, I mean, this is how they cooked, and they cooked in the old clay pots. And if they were going to bake bread, they had grown their wheat, and so the baking of the bread was a huge process. It was huge. They'd have to go harvest the wheat. They'd have to dry the wheat, then they'd have to grind it by hand into the flour. Then they'd have to bake the bread, which it just took forever. I mean, because of how their cooking things were. Their cooking stoves or whatever they had, their little ovens. So it would take a long time for that. So that was one of the things that they had plentiful of. They didn't have and like I said before, they didn't have a lot of meat or anything, so that's what they ate, was bread and beer. So they did that. They also had the spices, coriander and cumin and, well, garlic. I consider that a spice because it's real flavorful. They had salt. They had different things like that they used to flavor the meats and vegetables with. They also got fish. They got their fish from the Nile. So the Nile was very important to them, not only for their livelihood of the fish, but it was also for the livelihood of the land, because it did make the land very fertile. It also, back in the day, I think Egyptians were one of the first, if I'm wrong, please correct me, was one of the first with the irrigation with the Nile. Was that not correct? Yes. So that too was, we thought we invented the irrigation. No, we didn't. They did many years ago. And that too was very helpful to them to make sure that it was irrigated. So they watered their plants, they watered their crops with it. They drank the water. They bathed in it. They did all kinds of things in that water, I'm sure. They also did their laundry with that Nile River. And they did it also produced a trades market, is that correct? Do you know? Yeah, superhighway of sorts, that they had over many years. So that, and today, I have to tell you this is what I've been practicing all morning. I don't know why I'm having a tough time saying it, though. Fafala. Does anybody know what fafala is? What is that? What do we have in Italy? When the Italians came to... No, it's a bean. The fafala bean. The fava bean, yes. Fafala is like a bean cake. And today it's still used. Many of the foods that were in back 3,000 years ago or 2,500 years ago has evolved. We're still eating it today. Hummus is one as well. Hummus, we use hummus. I use hummus a lot, and in Pantera we use that a lot as a dip with pita breads, pocket breads. The breads were made in 30 different shapes. I don't know. It's bread, but they wanted to make it in different shapes and make it more interesting. So a lot of the things that they did back in the day, we still do today. So I was very, very thrilled and privileged to be able to research the foods, because I thought, it's just food, but I was so interested. I got so wrapped up in how it was made, how they cooked it, and then how they ate it, and who could afford what. And it was all, in all actuality, it was all about who had what back in the day, So kind of like what it is today, but not quite so bad. But it was then, Okay, poor people ate, they were healthy. These people ate, they had money, not so healthy. I think that's the way it is today. So that's what I found out. Thank you. I hope you enjoy the cookies.
Anybody? Any questions or comments?
Excuse me.
Well, I have a question for each of our speakers, if I may, and I'll start with food. Kathy, Rhodes. In the burial tombs of this size or any other size, you find jars and some grains and some food. What was your take about that?
Well, to me, I thought it was for them to take on their journey. because the body was going to take a journey, and that's what that's what it was to me. Because in all actuality, when they opened some of these tombs up, that's what you found in there. You found the jars and different things in there, and that's what leads us to know what they used as utensils back then as well, you know, and how they stored things, and actually how they preserved things,
Yeah.
you know, which was drying it in jars.
They found something very strange, and you correct me in this if you like. At a certain height here where in the pyramidal shape, the grains were alive still after these many years.
Mhm.
Because of this shape, they have something about the 1/3 or something that says if you put anything here, the food wouldn't rot or something, and we
Yeah.
can experiment with it
Yeah.
even now. I mean, you put, for some reason, this shape preserves food.
You know what? That's funny that you would say that, because in Clem Hall right now at FCS, we are doing some research on some gluten-free breads, and we have a pizza crust that's laid out for 5 days now, maybe 6 days, I don't know. And it was doing fine. There was no mold or anything on it, and that's what we're trying to make is a shelf-stable bread. And someone had mistakenly put a small calculator on top of that bread, and right where that calculator was at has the outline of mold. So what does that have to do? See how that
There's something
it
there.
makes me think, yes,
Something in there.
That's a good idea.
By the way, did they eat meat at the time in ancient Egypt?
They did not. The poor did not eat as much meat as the mutton.
rich.
They had mutton, but it was beef and pork is what the rich ate. But they had to be able to afford to bring it in on the Nile, you know, from other countries. So that's what they ate. They ate prairie animals, you know, birds and things like that as well.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll come back to you if anybody has questions. Go to the fraud and the money.
Okay.
Did you read anything in your research about fraud at the time, or cheating in the marketplace, or any kind of evil thing that happened?
Outside of the scribes stealing from the pharaohs, no, I did not run across anything.
Okay. Do you have any idea about how much money can they count to million, for example, or just 100 or 1,000 or whatever the currency is? Do they have big sums of money to talk about, not just nickel or dime or something?
While what I read didn't give specific numbers, I got the impression that these sums were large for that time period.
Okay. Well, last question for you at this time. Some papyri would mention how did they divide money between family members and the wills, how to divide the acres accurately, how to make a replacement or equivalency of square and circle with the pi thing. Does this ring any bell?
No.
That's interesting for next presentation, I guess.
Well, I would ask on that, what was their currency? What was their currency? And your first slide had the little circles.
That was
What
the
was
money of the
that?
Sumerians.
Oh,
That's actually shell money.
Oh, okay.
It's like a shell money, and then basically that was the currency that was going around that different area until, of course, the barter system and reciprocal agreements and transactions.
Tourism.
Mm-hmm.
What was the indication of Crete having a hotel or something?
That was one of the first organized hostels where you paid for your actual bed, and you actually had your own room, or a dormitory type room, depending on your class system.
So it is documented.
Mm-hmm. Before that, I mean, you could stay anywhere. What I didn't get into also was the laws of hospitality. Of course, in that area, it's built into the legal system. You cannot refuse someone hospitality on certain situations. Biblical times, of course, you read the Bible, and in Christian terms, again, Mary and Joseph were turned away at the inn.
Yes.
Again, but the innkeeper could have faced certain problems with that, with the legal systems. In Egypt, of course, it's built into, you're supposed to, again, your table is supposed to be, if you have someone coming in under a class system, your table has to be laid out with certain things for that class system. And if you didn't, you had to put forth money or any type of resources to get those items, specific oils, specific spices, specific foods.
Okay, and it was interesting that somebody from the government would say, I'm important, put me in this or that, or feed me with this, or that's interesting.
Yeah, and that was one of because of the dynamic increase in trade and travel, people being able to go from one place to another. You really see that status quo coming into even more prevalent in other societies. And of course, Egypt took it to that next level, okay, because they were the society of that time period, before the Greeks, before the Romans.
Do you find that it is amazing that to us, when we say ancient Egypt, we look back and say all of them are ancient Egypt. But to them, there were 2,000 years between. For example, here you have this stela talking about 1,000 years after this was built. So it is ancient to these guys who made some repair or something to it after 1,000 years. But when we go as tourists or as natives, you look at this and this as one piece, because they are kind of as if you are looking into a series of mountains. You lose the distance. You see them all like.
And also, you have to think about, we lose a lot within time, because one nation, comes to prominence, and then, of course, they decline. Just like Romans became very prominent after the ancient Egyptians, and then, of course, the decline. But you can see that within the landscape itself. If you would take pictures from that time period, and you can see the buildup of different attractions, as we call them today. Society, you can see like written into the landscape itself, the history. If you would look at the build-up and the architecture and the sophistication of the architecture because of the technology of what was happening, again, and then people coming to visit and that exchange and taking it back to the different areas of the Mediterranean. Of course, then you see the Greeks, building. And of course, you can take it back to the ancient Egyptians on the different styles and building. It's like, how did they do that? Let's take that back now, and can we, improve our society?
And I concur with you with the tourism thing, because in the oldest book in the Bible, the book of Job, is the first mention to the pyramids. He was living in the land and near current Palestine, Jordan thing, in the Oast land, as you call it, and they heard about the pyramids and heard about rich people and heard about pharaohs. And this oldest book in history that says, I'm not so proud of myself, that's Job saying, I was so modest. I'm not like those people who are proud to build pyramids for their death burials. So these things have been known all over the place, and as you said.
And again, the Egyptians were building these things for the personification of the pharaohs.
Yes.
But then you had the festival came into its own at this time period, because it now just not as celebratory because of the movement of the sun across the ages of the pharaohs. People were coming not only for the religious festivals, but now they have all this structure to look at and to draw from and to write about. And you see the organization of festivals and actually tour guides and tour brochures. They actually see information coming out of Egypt, pockets of information taking back, even if it's oral and it's communicated by mouth. You've got a verbal brochure. It's like you have to go for this religious, even though it may not be my religion, they're going to see this spectacle.
Yeah.
And so, actually, when my background's also in the historical aspects of tourism, and I always thought one thing, organized tourism was from the 1820s with the Scots, because of the Prince Regent going up to Edinburgh and visiting Sir Walter Scott, actually organizing that event. But actually doing this research, I actually can now pinpoint even earlier organized tourism. Not that it is from the 19th century, but now you can see I have even greater respect for organized tourism.
Yeah. Somebody told me that it's written that ancient Egyptians would go in the festivals and the national days of whatever vacationing in the plateau in front of the pyramids, the pyramid and the Sphinx, like we go today for Sound and Light and see this. That was their parking.
That was the movie theater.
Yes, amusement park for them. So it's interesting. Now, if you don't have any questions, I have two questions for fashion. What is it psychologically speaking, that makes people try to change fashion from time to time, year to year or 5 years or whatever? What is the, why this urge to change old fashion, new fashion?
The greatest reason to change fashion is a person's need to be an individual. So, you know, and you'll notice even if we look back to old fashions, there's a Thoreau quote that says each generation laughs at the last generation's fashions but follows religiously the new. And so I think, you know, things change enough to where as consumers we have to buy the newest thing, but we have so many influences. But the primary reason is because our just need to be an individual. And so we develop, you know, we have these subcultures that develop different fashions. So right now the emu fashion movement, which comes from Japan, and you know, the black kind of Hot Topic stores. If you guys, I don't know if you've heard of Hot Topic, but you'll see a lot of the teenagers wearing them. And of course, that leads me to another point, that it comes primarily from younger generations as far as developing.
So when you say individual, you mean individual or group as a personality of a generation?
Well, both.
Individuality.
I would say both. So as much as we want to be an individual and express ourselves, and some more than others, we also want to fit in and not stand out too much. So finding that happy medium, I guess.
So talking about this, how or what is the happy medium between, let us talk about the younger generations. They want to belong and be like everybody else.
Right.
Mommy, I want to dress like other girls, or the boys would.
But I also want to be the first one to have the newest item.
Yes, yes.
So that's the difference,
So
I guess.
is a real struggle
Right.
between being really individual amongst and
Yes.
being in the group.
Right, and there's something called the fashion life cycle. So it's a bell curve basically. So it starts, with just a few that accept the trend, and then we see a concentration in the market of, let's say, the iPod. So we have our first few people that will get the newest iPod, and then slowly but surely it saturates the market, and then it goes through a decline at the end.
Now, take my question in good faith.
Okay.
Would the fashion leaders in the world play on this to make big money, because they play on the urge or the instinct for human beings to change? I want not to be bored. I want to belong, and I want to be individual. So these natural instincts, are they, in a bad sense, manipulated or played on, so that these guys are meeting in Hawaii and say, let us make the skirt shorter.
Right.
Next year we'll make the other one. No, keep this for the third year, so we can milk the honey as we go.
Absolutely, they're out to make money, and that's their way of making money, is to come up with the newest and latest trend and hope that it goes into the culture and catches on, basically. And there's two different theories. There's the trickle-down theory, that fashion comes from higher economic statuses and trickles down into us commoners, I guess. And then there's also the subculture theory, where it comes from the lower classes and, in a sense, trickles up into the middle classes and upper classes.
Do you advise the younger generation to be wise, not to be manipulated by the scams or by whatever in the market?
When I'm giving fashion advice to my students or telling them about, being a good consumer, and I always say, buy classics for your wardrobe that will last you a long time, and it also helps you to be, portray yourself as a classy person. And then with lack of a better way of saying it, accessorize with trendy items that you don't necessarily have to spend a lot of money on, but you're still up to date with your wardrobe.
One last question.
So, I don't know if that answers.
Any cow or any animal wouldn't feel the urge to change fashion or change, and not feeling bored. Animals don't have this. Human beings have this. What is it? This, when you hear about some Darwinian evolutionists who say the baboon has 99% DNA like human beings. or something like that. So if the DNA is almost the same with animals, you never see a monkey feeling bored or changing dresses or wanting it. What is it?
What is it that sets us apart? Is that what you're asking
Yes,
me?
we can keep it for next session if you.
That's a whole nother.
Yeah,
it's. I would say, well, my dissertation research was on nostalgia, and we have emotional connection to things that we wear. So, and places that we shop, and places that we eat, and places that we travel. And so things like this even give us a sense of nostalgia, that we can make that connection. And wow, every time I put on this necklace from now on, I will not only think about the fact that my great-grandmother wore it, but also that it was inspired by the Egyptian culture. So I would say just that kind of instinct.
Some appreciation here. Noon, would you please come stand up and...
As a small token of our appreciation for our speakers, we have a nice certificate from the Lumpkin College of Business and Applied Sciences and Booth Library here at Eastern for Betsy Pudliner. Axton Betz. This is your graduate student? Oh, wonderful. You've already have yours. And Katherine Rhodes. Kathy. And thank you for those cookies. You have enriched our knowledge of ancient Egypt and also current Egypt and some other consumer advice along the way. So we appreciate making our journey much more lively and entertaining as well as thoughtful. Thank you very much.